Hello everyone and welcome to Burnt Toaster Productions. I'm your host, Burnt Toaster. In this month's video, I'm going to be trying to complete Fable 2 by only using Will. The rules are pretty simple. I can only use Will abilities to eliminate any living creature. I can't upgrade anything else besides Will, save for one thing that I'll get to later. Weapons can only be used to break barricades, barrels, crates, or activate flit switches. As a bonus rule, I can only go down 3 times, but if I do go down more than that, I'll simply continue. It's mostly for bragging rights, but you can consider the run failed if I fall more than 3 times. And that's it for the rules. I also want to preface this video by saying I'm a little limited in terms of content with Fable. I love Fable as much as the next guy, but there are only so many ways to go through the series that I can think of off the top of my head. So if you have any ideas for Fable runs or any other challenge runs, shoot them down in the comment section below. Just keep in mind at some point production of the Fable videos will either stop or slow down immensely. I'm also wanting to branch out a little bit instead of being stuck inside a box that has very limited space. With all that said and out of the way, let's get to the video. As is usually the case, I start as a street urchin, ready to make some gold based off of Rose's curiosity about a magic music box. So I get to work looking for arrest warrants and posing for a picture. Now, if you want to get all technical, this run could be considered impossible. The only reason being Rex. You have to engage in melee combat with him in order to progress the story, but this is only the tutorial section and I haven't technically ended a life, so I feel like I'm in the clear. The other decision comes down to how to deal with the beetles in Balthazar's warehouse. Since I can't take a life without magic, I simply need to destroy his stock instead. The rest doesn't really matter, and I did my best to be as neutral as possible anyway. After a hard day's work, I go to Murgo, buy the music box, skitter off to a quiet place like some rat, and get this thing going. After it disappears, we go to bed and get escorted to Lucien's castle. And to summarize the entire event, some stuff happens and I'm blown out of a window by a flintlock. Years later, I'm up and ready to eventually take revenge on Lucien, but first I must go exploring to find the Chamber of Fate. Now, as I said, I can't take a life without will of some sort, so in light of that, I simply need to run by all the giant beetles that are in my way. I don't necessarily need the XP they're carrying at the moment, I just need to unlock some sort of spell, and the only way I can do that is by making it to the chamber and stepping into the light. Reaching the location gives me some will experience by default, and that means I can get my first spell, Inferno. The way spells work in Fable 2 is a bit different from Fable Anniversary. They both have targeted and AoE attacks. As you can imagine, targeted attacks deal more damage, but primarily damage one single target, whereas AoE will damage multiple targets, but deal less damage overall. And since I finally got some magic, I can go back through the cave and burn those beetles. Once I make my way back to the Cullis Gate, I have more beetles to exterminate, and afterwards it's time for some bigger game. Bandits. The road to Bowerstone being closed isn't very helpful, so I took it upon myself to do what the guards are too sorry to do. It wasn't horrible, but getting out of the way of danger isn't super easy. The movement in this game is a little funky. Regardless, Thag has been properly roasted like a rotisserie chicken, which will allow me to explain the one thing outside of will I can level up. That is the first level of Dexterous Styles. I tried doing a pure will user run, and when I got to the Crucible, I was getting slammed through several cinder blocks in a Denny's parking lot at 4:18 in the morning. One round had lots of enemies rushing me and I simply couldn't escape or use a spell to break away from the tidal wave of bony boys. So due to that failure, I decided to try again, and this time with the ability to roll out of the way. I don't have much health, and being able to put some distance between me and the things trying to snuff me out is the only way I can really do this run. Plus, in Fable Anniversary, you were able to roll around by default. I didn't really see the harm in allowing this one little thing. It's a basic mechanic. Of course, the roll in Fable 2 isn't perfect. Unless I'm brandishing a weapon, I have to lock on and fight with the camera to get out of the way. With that said, I make my way to Bowerstone and get some things in order. I got some proper attire and bought a rusty clockwork pistol. I wasn't a fan of seeing the crossbow on my back, and I just find the idea of a wizard with a firearm kind of funny. After everything has been dealt with, I meet with Teresa, who tells me about the spire and the 3 heroes I need to go around to collect. To get the Hero of Strength, I'm told my next destination is Oakfield. And in order to get into Oakfield, I have to pass through Rookridge. The bandits there don't pose much of a threat. Of course, once I reach the collapsed bridge, I have to jump down and go into a cave full of hobs. Hobs are a bit tankier than the bandits I was dealing with earlier. The longer a fight goes on, the more chances I will have at getting beaten to a pulp. Thankfully, once you've dealt with the main bulk of the Hob horde, the rest will usually scatter. After the fun of staying in a dark, damp cave with the little gremlins, I finally get out to the other side, give those bandits by the bridge the shock of their life, and move on to Oakfield. Since I'm here for a hero and the Temple of Light is about to gather some holy water for an acorn, I have to impress the abbot. The reason being, I need him to hire me as security for the monk that's to gather said water. Well, no time like the present, I suppose. Remember that destroyed bridge? Yeah, I have to take care of some bandits in order to get it repaired. I'm not going to complain too much. It means more XP for me. Also have to admit, I think Force Push might be one of my favorite spells in this game, and the only reason why is ragdoll physics. Plus, if a few bandits are sitting next to a ledge, they're goners. Anyway, the only enemies I'm facing are just a bunch of criminals with swords and guns. They're not difficult to handle. Eventually, Dash gets cornered and shocked. Can't outrun lightning, little man. When that quest is finished, I decide to gather the last of the renown I need by hiring a very mediocre bard and showing a trophy around. Didn't take long due to the bard drawing quite a few people in. After being that one annoying guy that brags about his exploits in a bar or a similar establishment, I finally have enough renown to convince the abbot to hire me. With that said, it's time to make my way over to him to accept the job. It's far from difficult for the most part. All I'm doing is escorting this Amazonian woman through a dimly lit cave. First stop is nothing to write home about. It simply explains that we both need to stand on pressure plates to get the Fiji water flowing into the ewer. It's after the first chamber that the fun begins. Which really means blasting Bony Boy's back with holy hellfire, and the occasional force push. Time to go to the next chamber. This one requires a bit more attention than the previous one. Bony Boys will start spawning in, and if they hit Sister Hannah, they'll temporarily halt the flow of water. Good thing is I have the second level of Inferno, so one charged up fireball will annihilate them. Now that we're done collecting water, it's time to do a little wave defense. The last room has continuously spawning Bony Boys. All I have to do is simply survive and purge them from this realm. And I'll admit, it was pretty easy. Even the headless Bony Boy didn't stand a chance against me. That's the quickest this fight has ever gone. Since all the bones in the immediate area have been charred, it's time to finish this job. In the final chamber, Hannah starts blessing the waters and we receive the news that her father is being held at gunpoint. Of course, as I get over there, he is no longer within his mortal coil. After the funeral for her father, Teresa swings on by and takes Hannah back to the Chamber of Fate. At the moment, I'm kind of left to my own devices, so I go and accept a quest to destroy more undead. It's quick, easy, and gets me some more renown, plus the satisfaction of getting just a tiny bit more vengeance. The rest of it will be fulfilled later. Since I don't feel like doing till death do us part, I go ahead and try to grab Garth. The Spire Guards here are a bit more tanky than anything else I have fought, but smiting them with the power of lightning seems to be a sound strategy. Except for the 3 guards at the end. Those guys had some decent health. Although one thing that didn't help is the simple fact that my health bar is tiny. Thank God I allowed myself to have the ability to roll, otherwise I'd have to deal with the subpar movement and end up getting knocked out repeatedly. Sadly, it looks like I was a little too late to get Garth and he was forcefully removed from his residence. Because I happened to be in the area, I helped Giles out with his little bandit problem. It's not too bad, this build is a little rough around the edges at the moment, but I need to spend time gathering XP if I want to improve it. The most difficult part of this entire ordeal was dealing with the last 2 waves of enemies. They're moderately tough and there are multiple of them, so a lot of my game plan involved rolling away to create distance, charging my most damaging spell, and letting it loose as soon as I got close enough. I had quite a few close calls. It's a good thing I packed plenty of healing supplies. Due to having such a rough time with those last waves, I was a bit apprehensive about fighting Ripper himself. He has that targeted slow time ability, which means he can charge at me and there's not much I can do about it. But I was worried for nothing. He didn't use that ability all that much and I basically ran from him while lobbing spells his way, until he yielded. I then decided to take him out for good by turning him into a magical pincushion. For being annoying to deal with and for the XP. Now that the bandits have been utterly eradicated, I can return to Giles for my reward, which isn't much besides some renown and a thank you. After all that fun, I stop by the Chamber of Fate and get my next objective. I have to go talk to Jeeves about getting Lucian's diary, which he buried for safekeeping. I just have to pay him 1,000 gold to get the location. Well, I have the money, so why not? I get over to the spot and have the wonderful task of taking care of a troll. It's not necessarily difficult, just slightly tedious. Once it has been defeated, I can get this diary and take it back to Teresa, who tells me the only way to get to Garth is by competing in the Crucible. Getting to Westcliff Camp involves a nice little trudge through the Bandit Coast, which wasn't that bad all things considered. I recently got force pushed to level 3, so most enemies in the area will be thrown around like ragdolls. It's even better when there's a sheer drop nearby or some geometry for them to get stuck on. Of course, I can't just breeze through the area, that'd be too easy. There's a highwayman at the end, which requires more force to knock over successfully. Though, all in all, he's a goner. Now Hammer and I can move on to Westcliff proper, and that highwayman has nothing on the annoyance of dealing with Balverines without the ability to use melee. They have this little charge attack that's decently fast and will knock you down, even if you're charging a spell. Man, I really hate Balverines. This is all made worse when we get into the Howling Halls and Hammer has to make a path through the mandatory spike pit. All I have to say is I'm glad I got Inferno to level 3 around this time. It utterly destroys the rabid mutts. Even the white Balverine was kind of a pushover. Regardless, we can finally move on and get out of here. Thanks to my exploits, I have enough renown to get into the Crucible and start this thing. But before I do, I need some more healing supplies. Potions, food, you know, the usual. I then decided, since I was out and about, to go help the Temple of Light fend off the Temple of Shadows. I kind of regretted doing that. I went through a nice amount of my healing items because of course they hired highwaymen to protect their cultists. Anyway, at the end, Cornelius sends some more highwaymen to fight me, and once they're dealt with, he sends waves of the undead. Unluckily for him, I have the ability to send them to a most fiery rest. He then got desperate and turned into a shadow person. Seems like he was either weak to fire damage or my magic is simply strong enough to clear through this fight with only one really close call. Now that that has been taken care of, I can go around Barrowstone, buy some supplies, sleep for a week, and repeat until I feel I'm good enough to go back to the Crucible. Of course, the first round was almost buttery smooth, and a couple of hiccups here and there, but nothing I can't handle. Round 2 was a bit more difficult, though that's mostly due to the enemy makeup. Some were ranged only and others were melee only. And as you can imagine, having to deal with 2 types of enemies is not very healthy. Due to my own negligence, I ended up falling for the first time. Well, as far as I know. I'm sure I'll tell you if that's true while I'm editing. Next round is simply more Hobbs, except they summon their help. Besides the explosive fellows. Oh, and the Pit of Unending Terror. It was probably one of my best rounds if you leave out the parts where I was blasted by explosions. Seems like even in game I'm a danger to myself. Afterwards, we're right where I was when I failed the first time. Round 4 with the Bony Boys. If I'm not careful, they'll dogpile me just like last time. My initial goal was to take them down as soon as possible, so I decided the best idea would be to wait in their little spawn circle. That, as you can likely imagine, worked against me and they knocked me out. The third wave of Bony Boys is where I started using the half of a brain cell I have left. Starting off with the first level of Slow Time, using that little reprieve to charge up my most powerful spell. If it was needed, I'd use the targeted version of Slow Time to create more distance. This tactic seemed to work pretty well. I may have gotten struck several times, but I had enough healing supplies to keep me going until they were all gone. With the undead deleted from existence, I can move on to the next round. Bandits. I really started using Slow Time more after the Bony Boys. It's a great way to cover yourself when you need to pop off a big spell. The bandit waves were pretty easy going. They don't put up much of a fight, even though I knocked myself out with an explosive barrel. That little bridge is probably the best spot for a will user, especially for one with access to force push. Anyway, time to move on to the next round, which is more bandits, except they like to use firearms. I did change up the spell slots a bit. It seemed to work wonders on managing aggro. I personally put Lightning on the first slot, Raise Dead on the second, Slow Time on the third, and my strongest spell I have access to at the moment on the fourth. The overall tactic is to summon some friends to draw the aggro, Slow Time, and then decimate everything that stands in my way. I will admit, for once it felt like I was really powerful despite the small health bar. It might make fights longer, but at the same time, slow is steady, steady is fast. So far my idea is working a lot better than I was initially anticipating. Granted, it took a nice little bit to get there, but the real test is coming up, and that is the Balverine round. Only difference is I have level 4 of Lightning now, and it is destroying them. Yeah, I got through the entire round without any complications. Even the white Balverine got folded like an omelet. Once I'm done playing with the rabid pups, it's time for the final round. I don't know just how well this current setup will work, but I'm going to give it a shot. The final round is with the Rock Troll. This is the perfect opportunity to test something out. I figured I'd probably be able to use the AoE version of an attack spell to deal damage to the nerve tendrils, rather than trying to aim at them individually and hope I hit it. Turns out you can, and trolls are also distracted by the summons. Yeah, I've got this round in the bag, even with the hobs dropping on by. Though I did get caught by a slam attack, promptly knocking me out, and that means it's the fourth one, so that bonus objective is gone. But a little bit of time later, the troll and hobs have been defeated, which means I can finally start my work in the spire. Once I'm over there, it's time to get to work. For now, I obey the Commandant simply so I can keep as much XP as possible. Though I'll still be following rule number 1 of this run. I can only end something's existence with magic. After a bit of time passes, I get the pleasure of guarding some prisoners. I'm to not give them any food, which I obey since I'm technically not killing them directly. After 137 weeks, the Commandant wants to see me again. Bob is doing Bob things, meaning he has mentally broken to the point of not being useful. Well, seeing as I can't take his life or hit the Commandant without magic, I simply have to sit there. As much as it pains me to lose my precious XP, I can't do anything about it. Years later, I have to report to the Commandant for a final time. This time I'm tasked with finding a guard that hasn't reported in yet. The guy's on the ground and Garth finally frees me from this collar. Good thing is I don't have to use the weapons off the guy's body. I have my magic back. Getting to the Commandant's chamber is pretty easy. The distraction tactic is still working wonders on managing aggro, so I don't have to worry too much about taking any damage. The actual fight with the Commandant wasn't awful, but it could have gone a lot smoother had I played a bit better. But it was still better than it usually is. Anyway, once he's dealt with, I can go with Garth and get out of here. The actual escape wasn't difficult, but since I was low on XP, I decided to take my time and gather as much of it as possible before leaving. With all the guards down for the count, we can make it back to Albion proper. Ah, it's so good to be free. I felt like I was stuck in a humid laundromat. After Garth goes with Teresa, I take a bit of time to buy some supplies and grow my beard back out. Since I'm good to go on my stock of health items, I can go meet Hammer at the inn in Rookridge. She says she's meeting someone about our last hero to collect. In the meantime, I go do a little side questing. I know I'll need more renown before I can get Reaver to come with me. Well, time to kill some hobs. Of course, Tommy here isn't thrilled about the whole ordeal and decides to try to fight the wizard that just electrocuted a cave full of hobs without breaking a sweat. Not the brightest bulb, are you, bud? After that, I help free some poor souls that were captured by slavers and then go help Giles's boy with finding a significant other, which wasn't difficult. It's nice to have a little break from all the combat for a change. After Rupert and Giles leave for Bowerstone, I can go back to the guild and make my way to Bloodstone. But first, I must protect Garth at his tower while he activates the Cull's Gate. Honestly, it wasn't hard. It never really is, but it was pretty smooth since I have Slow Time, Raise Dead, and a pretty strong lightning spell that covers a large area. Before you know it, I can finally teleport over to Wraithmarsh and fight my first Banshee. Banshees aren't too much of a challenge when using magic, just a bit annoying. The biggest issue is that the targeting is a bit spotty, though most of the time you'll be able to hit them without issue. But since they move around a bit in their stunned state, it can be difficult to shoot a good fireball at them. However, Banshees can be hit with the AoE version of the spell, even if they're not stunned, so all you have to do is hold B and let it rip. The rest of the journey was pretty uneventful. Inferno seems to work pretty well here, and bony boys are hardly an issue at this point. Banshees even less so. The only thing of note that I fought was the troll, and that was still a cakewalk. Having destroyed everything in my path, I finally make it to Bloodstone. The bad thing is, I need just a bit more renown. In light of that, I decided to rescue Charles from himself. He's in a crypt full of bony boys. Well, considering I have time manipulation on my side, I can easily fight them off and get him out of here safely. With Charles safe and back with his grandmother, I can go back to Reaver. Naturally, before he'll have anything to do with me, I have to go deliver his seal to the Shadow Court. This time around, the shadow creatures aren't a huge pain to deal with. Deeper within the creepy building, I can finally get this decision over with. I decided to keep the seal and age myself rather than some unfortunate bystander. It feels like it fits best with a wizard to be old anyway. Being the old bag of bones I am, I make it back to Reaver and Lucian decides to attack to try to capture us. Or at least Reaver. Good thing Reaver is 2 steps ahead with an escape tunnel. Those Spire guards are crawling all over the place, but they're not difficult at this stage of the game, so it's nothing to worry about. Once we make it through the tunnel, we have to deal with the Great Shard. Since I have great AoE abilities and am able to manage the aggro of the little peons it spawns, I don't have many issues with this fight. I found out level 1 of Lightning is the perfect spell to hit it with. It's quick and does pretty decent damage. The entire fight mostly involves taking out or distracting the ads and simply damaging the shard when its glowing bit is, well, glowing. It doesn't take long before it finally explodes and we can go to Bower Lake to perform a ritual. Thing is, during the ritual, Teresa disappears and Lucian pops on by. He then shoots my dog and me. Now it's time for the dream sequence. I go ahead and do some stuff in the dream sequence, then go to sleep to pass the time. Waking up in the middle of the night, I go towards the sound of the music box. Since it's just a singular linear path, I can quickly find and grab the music box. With the box in hand, I'm ready to take Lucian down. After stripping away the power he was siphoning from the others, I end this the good old American way. Yes, with a gun. I couldn't use my will abilities and I didn't want Reaver to take my glory from me. Plus, a wizard shooting someone with a firearm is just, it sounds insulting. With Lucian deader than dead, I can make my wish. I decided to go for love, the reason being it's the most neutral option available. With that said and done, the run is finished. Well, that was an experience. I actually never messed with magic in Fable 2. I always went with strength and skill. I'll admit, I'm rather pleased having done this run. I was trying to keep things the same across the board with the failed run, but I felt it would have been too short and decided to revise it a little. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, as well as hitting that little notification bell, especially if you want to see more content like this in the future. This has been Burnt Toaster from Burnt Toaster Productions, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.